Hi there, I'm Ian, and welcome to my channel. I figured as my very first episode, why not just do the autumn TBR? It's so cozy, it's so nice. Autumn TBR videos are always one of those where I'm really excited to see what people think is like cozy, like what is cozy to them in particular. But then also, like, you're gonna see in my choices today just how badly there are some books that don't even fit the cozy vibes or the autumn vibes, but I just really, really, really want to read them. And that's what's gonna happen today. You're new here, I'm new here. I just want to talk about books. You want to talk about books with me? That's exactly why I'm here. I tried to keep my selection down to a respectable 30 books. I kind of see autumn as like, September, October, November, right? Even though that's not technically how it goes. I thought like, okay, like 10 books a month. Almost. I think it's somewhere around like 34 or 35. I'm gonna try to make this fast, but it's my first time, so I can do this as poorly as I want and just pretend, or not even pretend, and just say that it's because it was my first time. I'm an amateur. I have no idea what I'm doing. Since it is kind of the middle of September, I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about what I have read. First up, I'm a mood reader, so I tend to read a lot of shit at once. It's a problem. Or it's not. I actually think it's wonderful. I think a lot of people get stressed out by how many books I can read at once. I finished Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle, up for the International Booker Prize. It's a collection of young women's boxing matches at a tournament in Reno, Nevada. And the whole thing is structured. Each kind of chapter is a new match within the tournament for the most part. I really did not like it at all. I thought the structure was genius. However, I think that there was a lot of meaning and like profundity plugged into like the middle of chapters. I thought this was gonna be kind of like heart pumping, heart racing, but it's actually quite philosophical, very reflective. Can't really recommend this one unless you are a female boxer. I am almost done with The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Just came to a big reveal. So here's the thing. I can't put this down, but I did know that there were some maybe questionable decisions made around like mental health rep. And I just came across the big twist. And I'm just like, I feel like there's a sensitivity review missing here. But again, I just want to say I also cannot like put this down. I think this is like one of those books where I'd say like be conscious, be aware, be kind to both yourself and others, and acknowledge that this isn't like the best representation, but then also like go ahead and enjoy it. This is fun to a certain extent. It can have both of those qualities as part of the experience, right? I can't put it down. So I've only got like 75 pages left. We'll probably finish this like right after I'm done recording. Then we've got Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. I did read There, Tommy Orange's first novel. It was absolutely fantastic. I'm about halfway through and I'm really, really liking it. It's multi-generational. It goes through, like a whole line. There's even like, the family tree. Come on. What's after the prologue? Family tree here at the beginning. And it moves through the first generations pretty quickly. I think I'm already to like present day. Okay. I'm really interested to see if now we start jumping around in time, or if we're gonna kind of have like a character study based on, what we know about like the generational trauma now. This is approaching like masterpiece level though. This is historical lit fic, FYI. And then I do love poetry. So I started Bluff by Danez Smith. I read Don't Call Us Dead probably in 2020 or 2021. I'm not that far into it because I've been really trying to just like process. His stuff is so impactful and emotional. So yeah, I will be finishing this in September. And then the other for sure thing that I'm going to be reading is James by Percival Everett. I read The Trees by Percival Everett, I think 2 or 3 years ago. and absolutely loved it. This is a retelling of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn from Jim's perspective. So far, it is both funny, but so poignant. Percival Everett is just an absolute genius. The way he put together these kind of dark themes and messages with kind of biting, searing humor that is also like laugh out loud humor is just, there's no other author like him. I'm really excited to finish this. I do have the large print because I prefer paperbacks. I can read it from like all the way over here. Yeah. So the next few things that I have slated for like September as part of autumn TBR. These are things that I hope to get to. The first one that I think I'll aim for, just to get that kind of like rush of dopamine when finishing a book, is The Perfect Bastard by Quinn Carver Johnson. These are poems about a protagonist. Its protagonist is a non-binary and queer professional wrestler traveling Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri, working for a booker known as the Puppeteer. Like, what? And I've read some of this, and as someone who grew up in Kansas, I immediately vibed with this. There was something so Midwestern about it. It was just like, wait a minute, I was queer in the Midwest, and I am feeling this vibe. So I'm actually really looking forward to reading this. Next, I consider this to be kind of like end of summer vibes. It's called Didn't Nobody Give a Shit What Happened to Carlotta. It takes place in, I think, over the like 4th of July weekend. But it's an orange cover, and I always associate orange with autumn. And so that is how it's making its way into here. But I read a little bit of this. It seems bonkers. This seems wild, maybe a little unhinged. Carlotta Mercedes has been misunderstood her entire life. When she was pulled into a robbery gone wrong, she still went by the name she'd grown up with in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. But soon after her incarceration, she took the name Carlotta and began living as a woman, an embrace of selfhood that prison authorities rejected, keeping her trapped in an all-male cell block. When, after more than 20 years, Carlotta is paroled, she returns to a much-changed New York City, where she struggles to reconcile with the son she left behind, to reunite with a family reluctant to accept her true identity, and to avoid any minor infraction that might send her back to lockup. Over a whirlwind 4th of July weekend, Didn't Nobody Give a Shit What Happened to Carlotta sweeps the reader through seemingly every street of Brooklyn, much as Joyce's Ulysses does through Dublin. Like, what? What is... So, I'm really looking forward to this. Reviews kind of seem all over the place, but I think I'll enjoy having this orange. Can you tell that I like the color orange? Speaking of weird reads, I realize that I am actually more into weird or weirder fiction than I am willing to admit yet. But this is How to Leave the House by Nathan Newman. This young man who's supposed to have a package delivered to his house, but it never makes it to his house. So then he has to go find it, because apparently he has to have it before he goes back to college, I think, or something like that. From what I can tell by the blurb, this story is, yes, about him going to find the missing package, but like kind of him encountering the town's people, including like ex-lovers. It's supposed to be queer, it's supposed to be funny, it's supposed to be a little weird. Those are things that I'm super duper into. Not to mention, like, I had to learn how to leave the house all over again after lockdown was done and stuff. Last but not least, for September, everyone has been kind of raving about this book, at least on Bookstagram, and that's Fall for Him. You know, just, it's an MM rom-com. I rarely read romance. I really don't care for straight romance, and I sometimes am interested in Achillean romances, less so in sapphic romance. Romance is just not my thing. But I am looking forward to this one because it has some ADHD rep in it, which is like, yeah, hi, my jam. A man falls through the ceiling into another guy's apartment. They become, I think this is enemies to lovers trope. But that's pretty much all I know. I haven't really like delved into the back. I was just like, ADHD, Achillean romance, oh my god, Fall for Him. Also fall, autumn, that was why I chose it. Up next is like October, I guess. First up, Fraternity by Andy Mientus. This is technically YA. It takes place in the 90s. It's dark academia, and it's queer dark academia. In the fall of, takes place in the fall. So in the fall of 1991, Zoe Orson transfers to the Blackfriars School for Boys, hoping for a fresh start following a scandal at his last school. But he isn't the only Blackfriars student with something to hide. So then he ends up joining this like secret gay club that's been around for decades and is like continued to be bullied. He stumbles upon some arcane text. I've never actually read Dark Academia, and I am kind of upset with myself for making this the first one, because if there's a chance that this could be bad. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this, and if it is bad, am I going to be turned off by Dark Academia? I don't know. I really hope not. But I just loved that it hit kind of, and I mean, it seems like an easy read as well. Very like dark October-y vibes. As much as I would love to just read horror like all of October, I know that my poor little heart cannot handle horror books for the entirety of 1 month. Okay, y'all, so I am guilty of associating dystopian speculative fiction with autumn, and I don't really know why. I want to say there's something in the Hunger Games that takes place in the autumn that just made me like kind of like lock into that. I really like dystopian. However, I'm not really into YA dystopia. The Hunger Games was like my jam. I just think that the Hunger Games is solid. But the other type of dystopian stuff that I like is actually much more like literature, and it's what I'm drawn to. And this is not YA, but it kind of could be, but it's definitely dystopian speculative fiction, and that's Proud Pink Sky by Redfern John Barrett. So Berlin is a gay metropolis. It's a gay state. Like, they have their own gay culture, their own gay language, and they have these districts where like different groups of gays live, right? Gay men are there, lesbians are there, twinks are there, or something like that. I'm really interested in reading the world building of something like that. Like, what would a gay world even fucking look like? There are going to be themes about acceptance, you know, how even within gay community, there is a lot of prejudice and discrimination that goes on. I'm excited for it. Reviews are mixed. We'll see if this actually hits for me, but I'm 1,000,000,000% interested in this. Sticking with purple, which is such an October vibe to me. Medusa of the Roses by Naveed Sinaki. It takes place in Iran. It's about this man whose lover gets beat up, ends up in the hospital. He visits him, and then suddenly his lover disappears, and he goes in search of him. And that's what this book is mainly about. I actually started this a while ago. It was while I was reading Martyr, and they had some really, really similar themes, even though the stories are two completely different stories. But they're both Iranian American authors. And I was like, how about I save it for a different month? This seems like it's going to be a little unhinged, a little weird, maybe a little aggressive. It's very, very gay so far. That unhinged vibe. It's a nice short one too, and I feel like I could get to this quick. Oh my god. Speaking of queer and weird, then comes Jeanette Winterson's Frankenstein. As Brexit grips Britain, Rye, a young transgender doctor, is falling in love. The object of their misguided affection, the celebrated AI specialist Professor Victor Stein. Meanwhile, Ron Lord, just divorced and living with his mother again, is set to make his fortune with a new generation of sex dolls for lonely men everywhere. Ranging from 1816, when 19-year-old Mary Shelley pens her radical first novel, to a Cyronics facility in present-day Arizona where the dead wait to return to life, Frankenstein shows us how much closer we are to the future than we realize. I've heard that this is just like really effing weird, so we'll see how this goes. I'm not sold that I'm gonna love this. The page I opened it up to when I was at the bookstore was super spicy and I was like, whoa, what? The spice definitely reeled me in. Next is a book that I'm so effing excited about. I must admit that I have been looking forward to this book for a really, really long time. Like, how many historical fiction books take place in the 11th century? I'm a historical fiction nerd, so this could be just flying over everyone's heads. But I am really pumped for this. Nicked by M.T. Anderson. Yeah, so it's like a ragtag group of like queers and outcasts that are gonna go steal some like mysterious liquid. I read that it was like a queer adventure heist taking place in 11th century Italy. Like, I'm in. I'll do it, whatever it is. It's also pretty short too. A book that I've had for a really long time, been on my TBR for a really long time, 1000% fits the October aesthetic with Ghost Story being a part of it. It's a YA novel and it's called Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This, from what I understand, is quite popular. People really, really like this book. For those of you that don't know what this is about, a genderqueer person named Yadriel wants to prove himself to be like a real brujo. So he and his cousin decide to perform a ceremony to bring a ghost of their unalived cousin back to life and set it free. However, they actually bring back the ghost of like the school resident bad boy. Even if this just ends up being not even romance, but like a friendship story, like I will absolutely love that. Next is a book that I'm really looking forward to, more purple. It's called Beautyland, and it is by, I can't even read that, Marie Helene Bertino. Like I can't do that. Like what? Come on. Anyway, I've heard really, really good things about this. I've heard it's a feel-good kind of book. And I'm like, that sounds fantastic. But it's also about aliens, which is also super October. I know that I'm taking a lot of liberties with October books here. I have to. I can't read scary the whole time. Plus, also, like, reading the same thing over and over and over again, I'm such a mood reader. If I just grabbed a stack of horror novels, of which I have quite a few, and was like, this is what I'm gonna read for a whole month, I would tire out so fast. This is about a girl who is raised as a human, but while growing up, she's sending back reports to like the alien race, and her friend finally convinces her to come out and like tell people what she's been doing. You'd think that that would be like really scary, and I'm sure the conflict in this is actually probably going to be like really intense, but from what I understand, it's a feel good. This is the last of like the not horror novels, but it's still a little bit October because it's called Anyone's Ghost, and it's by August Thompson. I've heard really fantastic things about this one too. This one seems to be more about friendship. I think it might be told from the perspective of someone who is unalive. It is probably going to be about a friendship between a queer boy and a straight boy as young men, and how the queer one is in love with the straight one, and presumably how the straight one can't return love that same way. This will probably make me cry, so a little bit heartbreaking, but it's got ghost stuff in it, so it's obviously fit for October. Okay, now the scary shit. Creepypasta. Everyone says that this is like one of the scariest books that they've ever read. It was originally on Reddit, and then now it's like in published form, and everyone says that it's terrifying, and that's Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. In an attempt to make sense of his own mysterious and unsettling childhood memories, a man begins to reconstruct his past. As the games and adventures of his youth become engulfed by a larger story, he finds that it forms a tapestry of unbelievable horror that he never could have expected. Each chapter completes a different piece of the puzzle for both you and the narrator, and by the end of it all, you will wish that you could forget what he never knew. I have no idea what to expect. I literally have not read anything else about it aside from what's on the back. Every single time someone talks about it, I tune out like what it's about, because I just have a gut feeling that going in knowing as little as possible about this is going to make this really, really terrifying. Speaking of books that everyone says are really, really, really terrifying, Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. So this is about a newly engaged couple who go to a cabin to like celebrate their engagement, and then they hear some like ghastly noises from the woods nearby, right? It says, a dark figure looms near the windows in the dead of night, whispering to Faye. As the weather turns deadly, Felix discovers that his terrified fiancée isn't mumbling in her sleep, she's whispering back. So I think it's told from the perspective of Felix. The terrifying things are like happening to his fiance, but he's the one telling the story. I hear that this is really, really scary, so we'll see how this goes. Then the next two books kind of have to do with horror and race, like much in the style of like Get Out. The first one is called When the Reckoning Comes by Latanya McQueen. This woman finally gets to leave her segregated hometown in the South, but she comes back for her friend's wedding, and this wedding is hosted on it's like a vacation resort, but it used to be a plantation. This vacation resort is actually paying ode to the antebellum South. Like, it's got themed drinks and there are some reenactments. Apparently it's just preposterously offensive. There may be a little bit of a revenge story in here. All it says is, as the weekend unfolds, these friends are forced to acknowledge their history together and to save themselves from what is to come. That's literally all it says. Regardless of whether or not this is like scary, this sounds so fascinating. I'm really into this. The other one is a more recent publication by Tennant and Reeve Dew, for those of you that have not heard about the Reformatory. 12-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr. is sentenced to 6 months at the Gracetown School for Boys in Gracetown, Florida, June 1950, for kicking the son of the largest landowner in town in defense of his older sister, Gloria. So begins Robbie's journey further into the terrors of the Jim Crow South and the very real horror of the school they call the Reformatory. Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts, or haints. But what was once a comfort to him after the loss of his mother has become a window into the truth of what happens at the Reformatory. So I guess there's a race against time here. I don't know much else. S.A. Cosby and Stephen Graham Jones both blurbing the front here. Promising sign. The people that I have seen that have read this have loved it. I hope I can be added to that list. And that is October. November is my birthday month, so I take it very seriously. I don't. November, I have travel planned. I actually have travel planned for each month. November is probably going to be the bigger travel month, where like I will spend so much time in transit that I will get a bunch of reading done like while I'm on a plane. Then there's the other scenario in which I am out doing fun shit and having a blast and am not hardly reading like at all. I love November as far as the choices that I have. They're pretty varied. November is great because it's like this mixture of like, ooh, the day is getting darker and things are getting chillier, but then there's still like the warmth of Thanksgiving meal with loved ones, color of the leaves. It's not too cold, but it's getting colder. You get some holidays in there. You've also got like Dia de los Muertos, so like a little bit of October like bleeding into November, maybe still watching some like scary movies, and that's like kind of reflected in my reading too. First up is a literature pick, but it's like, I guess this is like a literary thriller or like literary mystery, like I don't really know. It's called Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka. It's about a serial unaliver. It's told from the perspective of the women in his life. He's on death row. The story revolves around him, but it has a lot to do with how the women in his life influenced him and how he has influenced women in his life. This sounds really, really interesting to me. I also love the cover. Literally, like, how many purple covers have I been, like, purple and pink, right? I'm looking forward to finally getting around to this. 2 books that I've chosen to help stem eating to the point of discomfort. The first one being A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. It's about a foodie writer who just decides to become the hedonist she knows she is deep down. It's like a gender critique, satire. I think that this is going to be a good time, but I also have a feeling this is going to be pretty disturbing too. Speaking of disturbing, the other one is Tender is the Flesh. This is dystopic, and it essentially takes place in a world where humans can't eat animal meat. All animal meat carries a virus that will kill humans. So humans decide to harvest human meat. I have been waffling on reading this for literally years, and I think this is the time to do it. So you see how I'm like bringing in some of that like October spooky, like October horror into November. This is where it's really showing up. This is one of those I can finish on a plane. Speaking of dystopic stuff, the cover just gives me that autumn vibe, but it's Parable of the Sower. See, like are those leaves? I don't know what those are, but those feel like falling leaves. Octavia E. Butler, I've read Kindred, absolutely one of my favorite books of all time. I haven't read another Octavia E. Butler since, so this will be really nice, and it takes place during 2024. From the back, America is a place of chaos where violence rules and only the rich and powerful are safe. Fact. Lauren Olamina, a young woman with the extraordinary power to feel the pain of others as her own, records everything she sees of this broken world in her journal. Then, one terrible night, everything alters beyond recognition, and Lauren must make her voice heard for the sake of those she loves. Soon, her vision becomes reality, and her dreams of a better way to live gain the power to change humanity forever. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. Yeah. I kind of have a feeling I'm gonna like it. Dystopic stuff Continuing, everyone has been talking about this book for such a long time. Who have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. It's about a group of women who are in a cage underground. They don't remember how they got there, and then they break free. And that's all I know, first of all. That's really all you should know going into this. It's super short. It really feels like something I could finish on a plane. I have a feeling that I will also love it because I'm no different than the masses, let's be real. Then a friend of mine also suggested to me that I read their favorite book of all time, and I'm not a total asshole, so I'm probably going to, and that's Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I know this is very popular. I have not read it. Here's the thing though, is I am pretty sure I did watch Shadow and Bone on Netflix, but it didn't really leave that much of an impression on me. I'm glad I don't really remember it because I think I'd rather just kind of like go into this like quote unquote blind. It's about friends, a heist, just seems like I live on a very busy street, so if you love the living in the middle of a city vibe, that's totally my aesthetic here. Six of Crows, really looking forward to it. Then I honestly, I don't know really why I'm placing this in November, except for the fact that I just really, really want to read this, and I want to read this before the end of the year because I also have a feeling that it could be a favorite of the year, and I want to read it as soon as possible. And that's Four Squares by Bobby Finger. Essentially, stop fucking saying essentially. This is just basically about being queer and old and living together and being friends as single queer old people without kids. I think that's what it is. That's what I've gathered. I mean, this is a longer explanation, but seems to be like a bit of a character study about friendships. I love books about friendships, like found family, chosen family, stuff like that, especially within the context of queerness specifically. So important. That's how we survive and protect each other and continue our own histories, which are really important to younger queers. I am really looking forward to reading this, like so much so that I'm putting it on my autumn TBR when it has literally nothing to do with autumn, except for maybe like we're in like the autumn of these characters' lives. Then the true coziness coming through. This is Real. Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree, the prequel to Legends and Lattes, which I read a couple years ago and really enjoyed. For those of you that don't know, Legends and Lattes is low stakes, high fantasy about an orc who decides to stop headhunting and instead open up a coffee shop in a part of this fantasy world where no one like really knows what coffee is, and they invent like cinnamon rolls, and Viv the orc like falls in love with a like femme succubus. This is a prequel, takes place during like kind of the fighting years, but I think that it is going to provide a little bit extra context around Legends and Lattes. I'm kind of hoping that this is it of the story though. Like I don't really want like a trilogy or anything like that, but it looks cute. I'm excited. Then speaking of cozy duologies, I'm gonna read the second book in the Monk and Robot duology. This is Prayer for the Crown Shy. It's the sequel to A Psalm for the Wild Built. It kind of hints at this America, like maybe hundreds of years in the future, maybe thousands, who knows, where humans and robots live separately after what was a civil war. And the robots and humans came to an agreement that if robots were allowed to go live in nature and never contact humans again, they would like coexist in peace, except you're not coexisting if you're not going to literally see each other like at all. So after being sent on a quest to find out what humans really need, Dex, who is the T-Monk, runs into Moscap, which is the robot, and even though they're not supposed to be talking to each other at all, they travel together on foot, and it's very low stakes. It's really just about their friendship, their understanding of each other, and I think that's what it is like how they come to understand each other is to like essentially two different races, right? I love these characters. It's also really short, seems like it could fit in a bag on a plane, maybe. The next three books, which are the last three books that I'm going to be talking about, are magical-ish, which I definitely associate with November. I'm not a huge fantasy reader. I'm much more geared towards magical realism or speculative fiction with some magical elements. Harry Potter is about as like high fantasy as I can get, and that still very much takes place in our real world. And it's not for lack of liking fantasy. Like, I love fantasy movies. I could watch them like all day. Some of these magical books I'm really excited to read. This one, The Cat Who Saved Books, it's about this awkward teenager who inherits a bookstore and has to close it down, but on the last day a cat like appears out of nowhere and starts talking to this young boy and tells him, please help me go save these books from like neglected or abusive owners. So I think that's really cute. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also a cat person. I'm definitely allergic. This seems like a fun one. Then another sequel. Like, can you believe this? I feel like my November stack, I'm either starting series or I'm finishing series. I got prequels, I got sequels, but this is the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I love. Super cozy vibes. But also, can we look at that sprayed edge? It's beautiful. For those of you that never read The House in the Cerulean Sea, it's very found family, very queer, a like kind of buttoned up, straight-laced, by the books social worker is sent out to this orphanage for monsters and is tasked with monitoring them and kind of hint like shutting the place down, and then where are these poor like monster children going to end up. But he ends up falling in love with like the man who runs the orphanage, and then also just like falls for these like cares so much for these children. TJ Klune came out with the sequel just a week ago, as of recording this. The premise is Arthur Parnassus has built a good life on the ashes of a bad one. He's the headmaster at an orphanage for magical children on a peculiar island, assisted by the love of his life, Linus Baker. And together, they'll do anything to protect their extraordinary and powerful charges. However, when Arthur is forced to make a public statement about his dark past, he finds himself fighting for those under his care. It's also a fight for the better future that all magic people deserve. But Arthur knows they've reached a breaking point when a new orphan joins their island home, an orphan who finds power in calling himself a monster, a word Arthur has tried so hard to banish to protect his children. Challenged from within and without, their volatile family might grow stronger, or everything Arthur loves could fall apart. This is gonna give me the cozy vibes, but like that magical November vibe. Speaking of magical November vibes, I think it's because like a few of the Harry Potter movies came out probably around Thanksgiving, and I know that this is gonna age me so much, but back when cable was a thing, like before streaming services, cable channels would drop like their big movies around Thanksgiving. Harry Potter or like even Lord of the Rings, before streaming came along, it would be on like TNT or like TBS, and it would be a world premiere of, you know, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets or something. And so I think that's why I have this association with like magical, especially like magical schools and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I plan on reading Rainbow Rowell's Carry On, which is the adult Harry Potter with vampires. I actually really like this edition. I love paperbacks. It's got a whole map in here. I like big paperbacks like this. So anyway, that's that. That is Autumn TBR. Thank you so much for watching. Tell me if there's anything that you have already read that you love, that you think I'm gonna love. Tell me if there's anything that you're hearing about for the first time and are really excited for. Please tell me if there's anything that you absolutely hated and you think I should chuck off this list. And give me a reason why. I have to have the reason why. Also, if I got any details wrong in any of this, please plop any corrections down below so that anyone watching this video can have the better information at hand. I am not a professional in any sense of the word. Thank you so much. Bye.